Alright guys, so I just recently checked out the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior, and a lot of you guys have been asking me for my quick thoughts on this documentary, and a lot of you guys chimed in with your thoughts on this as well. And a lot of you apparently do not like this very much, and I can understand why, because this is more or less just one big bashing of the Ultimate Warrior, but with a title like The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into. It is really heavy-sided on the negativity. It does bring up some positives about him and about his career, and even some of the wrestlers, when they say something negative, will come back with something positive. So I wouldn't say that this is 100% negative. I would just say that it's about 75% negative, and it really does focus on all the negative aspects of his wrestling career, and as such, it kind of comes off sort of weird, because they really should have done a better job of making it, you know, kind of a bit more even. Sure, he did some pretty bad things. He wasn't very professional at times, holding up Vince McMahon for money to wrestle, not showing up for gigs, getting, you know, time and time again, Vince McMahon giving him chance after chance after chance of him basically blowing it, taking his hiatus to come back to fans who had kind of moved on. He got suspended for like drug abuse, things like that should be talked about, should be brought up in a documentary about the Ultimate Warrior. I mean, you shouldn't, you know, let that stuff slide and not talk about it. It should be brought up, but at the same time, bring up a lot of positive things about the man as well, about how you know, great of a wrestler he was, and how you know, he rose to stardom so fast, and how he had so many fans, and yada yada yada. And even though they do bring that up in here, it's not that they don't talk about that stuff. It just sort of seems like it's pushed off to the side. Like, yeah, he rose to stardom and he was great, but he did this horrible thing, and oh, fans loved him and he did really good at this match. However, this bad thing, it's like, even for every good thing they bring up, they really, like, focus in on some negative things. So, yes, this documentary was very heavy-sided on the negative aspects of the Ultimate Warrior's career. Did he deserve to have some of this stuff talked about? Yes. Did he necessarily deserve to have it talked about in this way, where it's basically just one kind of big bashing of the Ultimate Warrior? I would say not so much. It just didn't seem fair. Even though the guy might have been a bit of a jerk and might have done horrible things, that doesn't mean you make a documentary, you know, just ripping him apart. Make a documentary that's fair and truthful and talks about everything from the positives to the negatives. A nice, well-rounded documentary that didn't feel like you were kind of putting together something that was a bit more hateful or hate-filled, as opposed to something that you put out to be like, hey, let's talk about the great career this guy had, even though, you know, there was a lot of negativity. Let's focus in on, you know, just this great wrestler who, you know, thousands of people adored and loved, and we'll talk about, you know, a nice, well-rounded his well-rounded career and everything great and everything negative about it. No, they really just focused in on the negative stuff, and you really shouldn't do that. It did feel kind of like one big, hey, Ultimate Warrior, F you. That's sort of what this felt like in a way, and I can understand why a lot of people did not like that. Apparently, there's another documentary out there about the Ultimate Warrior that they do a better job at, I guess, focusing on the positive and the negatives. I haven't seen that one yet. I will have to check it out, because, again, this one is definitely very, very negative, even though he sort of had it coming in a way, because he did some pretty bad stuff. Pretty crazy also to, if you, like, you know anything about this man and his career, you know, it's a shame how he ended up, like, dying. Everything from, he was inducted into, like, the Wrestling Hall of Fame one day, then I think he showed up to, what was it, like WrestleMania or something like that the next day, and then he was at, like, Raw the next day, and then he died. It's like, wow, all that stuff, like, boom, 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 and just, like, died, if I'm getting that correctly. You guys probably know him. I'm sure you wrestling fans know the life of the Ultimate Warrior better than I do. From what I Wikipedia'd on him, it was pretty crazy to find out that, like, how he passed away, and how he was finally, like, you know, inducted into the Hall of Fame and whatnot, and, you know, his career is being recognized, and then dead. It's like, ew, that stinks. But again, so yeah, this is kind of sort of one big bashing of the Ultimate Warrior. They don't do a very good job of pointing out all the positives. They do. if you're really paying attention to this documentary, you will hear positives and you will hear good things about the Ultimate Warrior and his career, but you gotta look through all the big heaviness of negativity that is definitely within this documentary. There is plenty of that. Even, gosh, I think about like the ending when they basically say things like, the Ultimate Warrior basically like came out of the gym and basically went, yeah, wrestling. Okay, that'd be a good way to make a career. It's like, geez, like, it just seemed like people had a lot of negative things to say about him, but apparently he wasn't very professional a lot of the times, and I can understand how he would rub a lot of people the wrong way. You're working in this close-knit family of wrestlers, you gotta be professional. If you're not, people are probably gonna be pretty upset with you, and from what I hear, according to this documentary, from what a lot of the other wrestlers were saying, a lot of the times he wasn't, he wasn't, like a team player. He wasn't being very professional. And that is kind of a shame that that's the way he was. Apparently he kept to himself a lot. So you get it. It is very much a shame. But still, the Ultimate Warrior, I mean, he's somebody I grew up with. I love the Ultimate Warrior when I was a kid. And it was a pretty interesting documentary. I would recommend checking this one out just to see what it is. And if you really want to know the negative side of and all the horrible things this guy did, this is one to see. But apparently there is a much better documentary out there that is more well-rounded and I guess covers both aspects from the positive to the negative stuff, and I really would like to see that documentary and see how that's covered. I do think that's a fair, documentary. That's how a documentary should be. Again, that's the main issue with this. It just doesn't seem very fair to be just ripping him apart the whole time. And I mean, as it says, the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior, and it really does talk about how he kind of self-destructed himself again from just the horrible things he did, the unprofessional stuff he did. Like when he took time off, that was one of the coolest things when they talk about him, how he like took I think like 2 years off and then like came back again, and people were saying that like in that time period that he had died and that like the Ultimate Warrior, the new Ultimate Warrior wasn't actually like the same guy. It was somebody else they brought in to play that character. I remember that when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot all about that. As a kid, hearing around the schoolyard that, hey, did you hear the Ultimate Warrior died? And then when he came back, it was, hey, that's not really him. He's dead. That's somebody else. I remember hearing everything from him dying of like a drug overdose. I remember people saying like the bands he had wrapped around him like cut off his circulation and he died. I remember hearing all kinds of crazy stuff like that. So when they brought that up, I was like, yes, I remember that. But they did focus on the fact that when he did that, why take that time off? You were like at the top of your game, and then you take this time off, and fans moved on. They're like, all right, well, we love the Ultimate Warrior, but now this new guy's here. We're gonna love him instead. And you come back, and the fans are kind of like, well, yay, Ultimate Warrior, but we moved on. So, again, he kind of did sort of self-destruct his own career. Had he been more professional and just kept on his game the whole time, he probably would have been, even greater than he already was. And not to say he wasn't great. He was. I mean, he rose to stardom quite quickly, and he became something pretty popular and pretty big. He just should have really, again, stayed on that game a bit more. And, he could have been like, he could have been the next Hulk Hogan. I mean, he could have been a household name more so than he already was at one point. I mean, Hulk Hogan is a household name. The Ultimate Warrior was a household name, not so much anymore. He could still be one, I think. So anyway, I know I'm rambling on now, but the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. Yes, very heavy-sided on the negativity. This really does just focus on all pretty much the bad stuff. It does mention some good stuff as well. It's not like it's 100% negative. Some people do have some good things to say about him. And it does talk about, his rise and everything like that. So that's great. But pretty much everything positive is followed up by something quite negative, and it really does bash the Ultimate Warrior, and it does kind of seem like a big F you to the Ultimate Warrior, as opposed to being more of a well-rounded documentary showcasing all the aspects, the good and the bad of the Ultimate Warrior, which apparently the new documentary does, and I gotta check out. So when I recommend this, I would say it is worth seeing because it's kind of interesting if you're a wrestling fan. If you want to know all the negative things the Ultimate Warrior did, it is something to check out. So if you're a wrestling fan, see this. If you're just kind of your average wrestling fan, maybe you don't know a lot about the Ultimate Warrior. I mean, granted, I'm an average wrestling fan. I loved wrestling from like back in the day. I'm not a new wrestling fan. I really don't know anything about wrestling anymore. And I am just kind of a very average fan of wrestling. But even though I don't know, it's hard to say. It is worth checking out, but I'd say for the most part, probably see the new documentary. It's probably the better watch, but I still thought this was pretty interesting, and I would kind of say if you have any interest in the Ultimate Warrior or wrestling, give it a watch.